Welcome to Amplifying Leadership, a podcast where we talk leadership and all that goes with it, with our guest stories, wins, and challenges. My name is Tara Lehman, and I am a partner, coach, and consultant at Twin Life Coaching and Business Services, of which Amplifying Leadership is a division. For our leadership clients, we love to support you through our podcast, tools, coaching, and more as part of our leadership services. To learn more about Amplifying Leadership and our leadership community, please visit us at amplifyingleadership.ca. Today, I am welcoming Laura Aiken, a resilience specialist and consultant at Thrive Leadership, who has a focus on fostering positive leadership practices that empower individuals and teams to thrive in their professional and personal lives. Welcome to the show, Laura.
Thanks, Tara. Great to be here. Great to meet you.
Yes, you too. And, so our audience knows we were chit-chatting prior to, and Laura is from the UK. My family's from the UK, but she has family near Toronto, Canada, and I live near Toronto, Canada. So it's a bit of a small world.
Small world, it really is.
Yes. So I'm going to let you introduce yourself and your leadership story, where you started, maybe where you are today. As an introduction for our audience.
Absolutely. Sounds good. So I'm going to wind back the clock. I'm one of those potentially quite annoying people who's enjoyed leadership my whole life, whether that was Girl Guides or Girl Scouts, I guess it is in the States, or, organizing the school prom. I grew up in the UAE in a really multicultural environment that I absolutely loved, and then moved to the UK to study engineering. And my engineering career took me to, the UK, US, and Australia, and leading teams on sort of complex billion-dollar energy projects.
Wow.
Which was really fun and interesting and challenging, especially, being a woman in engineering, being a woman leading diverse teams in engineering. There were lots of levels and levels.
I bet. Yes, of course.
All that to say, I realized over the course of my sort of decade in engineering that people were really my passion, and developing people was really important to me. So in 2020, I left engineering and moved into consulting and executive coaching full time. And that's where I am now, based in the UK, and helping primarily STEM-based companies build positive, connected, and resilient organizations where people can thrive.
I love that. That's amazing. So has there been, obviously you've dealt with some very large projects and teams and things like that probably throughout your career. Is there anything that really stood out to you as a big obstacle, maybe even as a female leader in what is probably predominantly a male-led industry? Any big obstacles or challenges that you had to overcome?
Yeah, I think many will resonate with the experience of being a woman in a male-dominated industry, to the point where I'm sure some people are tired of hearing about it. But it really is a challenge, and it's not easy feeling like an outsider, whether or not you're treated like an outsider, because sometimes it's about, the stories that are happening in your head, and sometimes it's about the environment. And for me, I think it was a combination of both. But I felt like I had to be better, do more, and kind of outperform my male peers. But at the same time, I felt that I was being rewarded less or recognized less. And that can really get to you, on top of the normal challenges of a complex working environment. You get, these microaggressions, being called things that aren't your name.
Yes.
Feeling like an outsider, feeling like you have to do more, be more. That sort of death by 1,000 paper cuts effect can be really difficult to manage. And to be honest, one of the reasons why I left engineering was because I burnt out, and it was just sustainable for me to be in that environment anymore. And again, a lot of people will resonate with it, but it's a real challenge that a lot of women or people who are somehow othered in an organization have to deal with.
Yes, and for the audience who doesn't know, I actually worked 23 years in the trucking industry, from customer service to leading the Canadian distribution center. And I know what you mean. I mean, one of the first events I ever went to was, 100, 125 people in the room, and there were 6 women.
Hmm.
And it was a long time ago. But they even had us stand up as the women in the room and have us with a microphone if we wanted to say what was something that we felt needed to change. And this is way back in the early 2000s.
Sounds terrifying.
Yeah, I don't mind standing up in front of groups, but some people would. But it goes to your point of, there can be those things that you don't expect when you're a woman leading in a male dominated industry. Lots of challenges and obstacles. And I'm sure there's, a lot more that you've probably overcome as well.
Yeah, and what it's making me think of in particular is there's a very common leadership archetype that, there's an image that comes to mind when we think of
Mm-hmm.
leader. And it's a little outdated, it's
Yes,
sort of
I agree.
tall, white, male, strong, confident, charismatic, all of these sort of stereotypes.
Mm-hmm.
And I think one of the challenges I had was being quite empathetic and emotional and really people oriented, was that some of the ways I behaved, I think, was taken as a weakness.
Yes,
My
that's common.
weakness was taken
Yeah.
as weakness rather than as a strength by
Mm-hmm.
some. I think some people recognize the power of it, but that's something that I think, the more we diversify those leadership archetypes, the more we're
Yeah.
gonna people use kindness for the benefit of their leadership and the leadership of others.
I love that point, the kindness piece, because, as leaders, we do need to be empathetic. And there's a place for, the emotional leader, and there's a place for that more direct leader. But there's
Hmm.
got to be a balance. It can't, I find that when you're just one or just the other, it's sometimes you could be missing something, or maybe don't make decisions well, etc., based on client experiences. This of course is not in every case, but
Yeah.
have you seen things like that as well, where they might be too far one way or the other?
Yeah, I think it being in sort of an engineering and construction dynamic, I definitely saw more on the aggressive or assertive side.
Mm-hmm.
Um, And in that arena, you've got to think about just the high stress,
Yes.
difficult working conditions, fatigue, and also, to be honest with you, the high rate of people taking their own lives in that industry.
Mm-hmm.
You could be the person who's standing between, this person having an okay day or a monumentally bad day, and
Mm-hmm.
making a decision to hurt themselves. So
Mm-hmm.
the stakes are so high sometimes,
Yeah.
and leaders don't necessarily get that training
Yeah.
on what the
Yes.
consequences of their behavior can be.
I agree. And I wanted to quickly come back to something that you had mentioned when it came to even just things like arguments or people saying things that aren't appropriate, or harassment in the workplace. When it comes, I was talking to a leader in the trucking industry up here in Canada, and they were telling me, sometimes it's difficult for them to try to balance, when they all of a sudden have those female leaders coming in, or making sure the employees aren't posting those posters that they shouldn't be posting, or that are offensive to women, for example. So that happens a lot as well, and it's something that training is really key for. So the diversity, equity, inclusion, belonging, whatever it is that each country calls it. What Let me ask you this: if we were to look at a new leader coming into an organization, such as the ones that maybe we worked with, um, or the industries that we worked in, actually, what would you say to them so that they become more of a balanced leader? So they're coming in, it's not necessarily balanced, but how can they come in and learn from the other people, but also balance the leadership style that they have as a new leader?
Hmm. Yeah, that's a great question. I'd love to hear your take on it as well, but I think for me, the foundation has got to be self-awareness, and you've
Mm-hmm.
got to have a really astute understanding of, you know, your strengths,
Mm-hmm.
your your triggers,
Yes.
right? What
Yes,
what makes
absolutely.
you tick,
Yep.
what you bring. And then, from that grounding, start to get an understanding of where other people are. I think
Mm-hmm.
there's this common, drive to be authentic as a leader. And,
Mm-hmm.
and that's great, of course. But for me, I think some people can get lost in the authenticity and forget to be adaptable.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
there's some people who are so steadfast, like, this is who I am, that they
Mm-hmm.
forget that they have to meet people where they are. And as a leader, you have to kind of make an assessment. Like, some people will need a bit of a softer communication style. Some people may
Mm-hmm.
need a slightly more direct, line of questioning.
Mm-hmm.
Uh,
Yeah.
and painting that picture of the different styles in your team, I think, is crucial for being able to lead authentically from a place of sort of courage and vulnerability and self-awareness, but also adapt your style so you're meeting people where they are and you can, make the most of the people around you.
I 100% agree, and I think to add to that as well is know the audience, which you alluded to. Know who you're talking to because you have to be adaptable. A great word that you use. You have to be adaptable as a leader, but also know when decisions need to be made or when you need to be firm, but you do need to be adaptable. We all come from different backgrounds, different countries, even you and I, right? And
Yeah.
so we have different values or belief systems in some cases. And so being adaptable and knowing who you're talking to and how they communicate is really, really important. I think on top of that, training, which you had mentioned earlier as well, and it's not about the one and done training, it's
Mm,
about doing continuous training or professional development, however you learn, right? Reading or courses or other webinars or whatever that is, are all key pieces too, I think. I want to come to a word that you mentioned, which is communication, which is, of course, a favorite topic of mine. What do you think communication should look like when you're working in not so much of a diverse atmosphere, such as you do or did? Um, how can you communicate with your team when maybe they're a little bit more on the norm of the male side, if that makes
mm.
sense? How can female leaders communicate when they're, coming in and they need to communicate with these people? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, it's a tricky one, isn't it? Because
Mhm.
the common advice that a lot of women leaders traditionally have got is be more assertive, be more
Yes.
direct, uh, shape your why and the purpose of, what your direction is. And I think that can be good advice in different scenarios.
Hmm.
Again, where I like to start is, first of all, self-awareness. What
Hmm.
what is your style? Having that understanding of who you are and again what your triggers are.
Yes.
Uh, and for teams to kind of go through that process together, I work with a psychometric called Luminous Spark, but there's lots of different psychometric profiles out there
Hmm.
can help you get an awareness of what the different communication styles are in a team.
Hmm.
And for me, that just makes it very sort of data based and objective. And it takes some of the emotion and the sort of
Hmm.
volatility out of communication. It's like, it's
Hmm.
not about you, it's not about me. It's just, you're red and I'm blue.
Yes. Yeah. Like the disc too. That's another big one, right? The disc
Exactly.
profiling. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I found them a really great foundation just to give teams language
Hmm.
to communicate a little bit more effectively. And then the other piece, which is really close to my heart, is around stress regulation
Yes.
and having an awareness of your emotional triggers and the regulators that you can use to kind of stay in a state of calm, or I use the language green zone.
Hmm.
Um, so many of us go into communication in a stress response, or where
Yes.
we're irritated, or there's something urgent coming up, and our emotions are high. And what that means is we're not able to communicate to the best of our ability. So one of the biggest tools that anyone can use to communicate more effectively is take a deep breath before you go into
yeah. I was literally talking to a client the other day about this exact thing. She's very stressed, very burnt out, massive project that is coming due like in days. And I said, are you breathing? Just breathe, relax, or go for that quick walk outside and breathe in some fresh air. Just breathe, because it really does help. That's a key one. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's what I really love to come back to. All humans, leaders, teams, families, communities can benefit from having a deeper understanding of stress and some of the different ways that you can use your body to regulate stress. And that's just amplified in the pressure cooker that is the workplace.
Yes,
and
agreed.
Everyone can benefit from having a bit of an understanding of what their stress response is, how stress can impact teams, and what are some simple ways that you can just turn the dial down a little bit so there's a little less volatility going into engagements.
Yes, yeah. And breath is something that you carry with you. So it's not like you need a tool or anything else to use it. It's a nice, and going outside, whatever, easy things to do, right? Just simple things. And free, and we like free. Let me ask you this. If you were to give a key takeaway to our audience today, who is a mix of new and seasoned leaders, what would you say that is? What would be that big tip you want to share with them today?
Yeah, I think the self-awareness piece can be easy to dismiss, especially if you're a more experienced leader. But for me, that relationship with yourself never ends.
Very true.
Just peel new layers of the onion, right?
Yes.
So never stop that journey of self-discovery and that relationship with yourself on understanding who you are, what your strengths are, what your triggers are, what makes you tick. So, you can do that through things like psychometrics. You can do that through things like, retreat experiences, which is one of the things that I do. You can do that through reading, or you can do that through psychometrics, like we talked about. I think, never stop learning about yourself. And then I think the second one is don't underestimate the power that stress has on your ability to lead, communicate, collaborate, and, do a little bit of research into what happens in your brain when you're stressed and some of the ways that you can regulate yourself and you can regulate other people. Because then you're on a bit more of a solid footing to go.
Yeah. Yeah, I love those tips. And I also like that you mentioned strengths, but you mentioned triggers, like being very self-aware of those things. So we can actually work and grow towards knowing how to respond to those things, to our triggers and that stress. I love those tips. So thank you very much for this awesome conversation today. If our guests wanted to learn a little bit more about you or your services, is there a way that they can find you online?
Yeah, thank you, Tara. My name is Laura C. Aiken, so you can find me on LinkedIn or on Instagram. My company is called thriveleadership.net. Or you can find out more about my retreat side of my business at lauraclaireaiken.com.
And so our audience knows her last name is spelled Aiken.
Yes, because there's lots of different variations of
that. It is, yes. Thank you again for sharing your perspective today. I greatly appreciate your time.
Thank you so much, Tara. This was a great conversation. Appreciate you.
A big thank you to our listeners as well. We do hope you are taking away some key points to help you grow on your leadership path. If you are new to leadership or even a seasoned leader who knows that support and developing your skills are the way to moving forward on your leadership journey, or want to join a leadership community, please visit us at amplifyingleadership.ca, a twin life coaching and business services division. Until next time, please be safe and be an amazing leader or leader to be.